We're going to now hear from Sanjay Sehgal from Nestlé. Please, sir, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everybody. It's still, no, good afternoon now, a little late. So I'm holding, the only thing holding us from our lunch is the three of us, so we'll try and keep it very short. You did say that you'll try and bring an international perspective. I do work for Nestlé in the US, but till a year back, I was heading up our global strategy on health and wellness at our head office in Switzerland. So I'll try and bring in as much of our international perspective to this conversation today. When Rachel asked me about this topic, I kind of try to break it down into two pieces. The first obvious one is, what are we doing in terms of reporting, and what are the learnings? What's our journey been like? And I'd like to share a few of the key milestones and some of the learnings that we have taken away for others who may want to go down this path. Equally importantly, maybe even more importantly, I'll share with you some of the insights on the CSV/NHW journey, not just the reporting journey. And I say this because creating shared value is a mindset. And as many of these speakers have said before me, it's about changing, it's bringing about change in an organization. It's about redefining the way you would redefine your business priorities. And that means you have to necessarily redefine many of the processes and organizational structures within. Because only by doing that would you start setting in place the infrastructure and the metrics which you can actually report on in years to come. So the journey actually starts much before that. And for us, therefore, when we talk about mindsets, I think the realization that we have is for everyone in Nestlé, and we have 330,000 employees, the recognition is that we are here to improve the lives of millions of consumers. That is our goal. We do this through offering tastier and healthier products. We do this through engaging with a supplier network. We do this through contributions to the economies of the world that we exist in, and we exist in over 100 different countries across the world. Over 4 million farmers are in some shape or form earning a living through being connected with Nestlé. We support the livelihoods of over almost 700,000 farmers who are directly, and we directly employ another 339,000 people. So there is a size and scale, and this is value creation. But we see this as a basic requirement. This is what any successful business would be doing. And I show you this next slide not to emphasize on the size and scale of the Nestlé organization, but to tell you that with the size and scale comes a responsibility. In fact, I would even say an obligation to help make a positive difference in the lives of people that we touch. Which is why in our mission statement, you'll see 3 important dimensions. And it says our objective is to be the recognized leader in nutrition, health, and wellness, the industry reference for financial performance. We are a commercial organization, and we have a responsibility to our shareholders, and we'd like to be the industry reference for the best financial performance there is. But we must do that in a manner that is trusted by stakeholders and contributes to the health and wellness of the population. These 3 are not mutually exclusive. You don't make trade-offs. They have to work together hand in hand. And I think that's a fundamental belief that drives creating shared value in our organization. Our CEO and chairman both have gone on record many a times to say that for a company to be successful over the long term and create value for shareholders, we must create value for society. This is what will make it sustainable. And therefore, it has to be built upon a set of principles and values and based upon respect. Respect for your employees, respect for all the stakeholders that you engage with, respect for the environment that you exist in and you want to leave behind for your children and your next generations, and respect for really every piece of engagement that you get into. Now, it is, when you look at this and you look at nutrition, health, and wellness, the environmental impact and the social impact, given the way the world population is growing, we realize that nutrition and the agenda around nutrition, health, and wellness will only garner more traction, will become increasingly more important, will actually be significant. And therefore, that's why it rests at the very heart of a CSV journey. Now, what happens as a consequence is that you start to then say, if this is what we want to do, what is it that we need to bring about as a change in the organization that will help drive this common aligned goal? For us, CSV must align with corporate goals for business and social good into one mission. This is important. It's a way of doing business that is sustainable. It needs top-level endorsement. It needs ownership at the very high level, which means the executive board has to sign off on this. It's not something that is driven by an individual. It's the entire leadership of the company that has to be committed to it. And then, most importantly, you start looking at your organization and your internal management tools. So when we look at our own journey on nutrition, health, and wellness, the idea was actually in our chairman's essay that he wrote sometime in 97, 98. And there was a paragraph in that that talked about his vision to move this organization from being a converter of agricultural produce into processed foods. And from there, he wanted to move it to a company that he saw as being at the heart of a coming together of food, pharma, even cosmetics, because he saw in that the whole focus on nutrition, health, and in fact, at that stage, he was talking of even well-being. But to do that, you had to change mindsets within the company. And it's important for us then to recognize that you cannot change mindsets by telling people you need to do things differently. You've got to help them do things that they currently do, but just slip in the additional factors that will make them do it differently. So you had to relook at all your tools. And I'll give you a small example. For years, we've had within our company a tool called 60/40. It's simply a blind product test that all our strategic products go through, where we check the product with consumers, a statistically significant sample, and make sure that the product tastes better than competition. That's a starting point of the product's journey. But it was always focused on taste. When we started on this journey, we said this is not sufficient. We need to introduce a nutritional dimension. So now we started to build a nutritional assessment for all our products. So today we have an internal set of criteria, and all the products that this company manufactures globally are assessed periodically on nutritional dimensions, besides the taste. And that's really what I mean by the tools. So suddenly what happens is business leaders start getting measured against those goals. And those are the goals that will help us report on our progress in the years to come. We didn't start with the goal of reporting on these. We just started putting those tools in place to actually help focus the business leaders on them. This was a natural evolution. We also then started expanding from the product to a portfolio. So at a portfolio level, we've introduced a nutritional dimension. We do this across other tools that we use. For example, in our capital expenditure process, we've introduced the nutrition and health dimension and the impact that we will have in the way we make our investments. We do this in our rural development framework, where we actually assess the value of what we're doing against the benefits that we might have for the cocoa farmers, the coffee farmers, the dairy farmers who we extensively engage with. So this has been our journey on bringing in these tools, and it's been a long journey. None of these are reported. They don't form part of the reporting discussion. But without those, we wouldn't be getting into a reporting conversation at all. Our journey on reporting started many years back, and it was, like many organizations, storytelling. So we talked about anecdotes, and the early reports that we had, the first one in 2002, was really the Nestlé Sustainability Review, and it was using a framework of economic, social, and environmental sustainability. It talked more about what we'd achieved over the years, rather than talking of what may have been important. It was what we saw as important issues for us, and we went and talked about it. So many a times we might have been talking to ourselves, and you know, that's part of the risk of not knowing what you're doing. So that evolved. Over the years, from 2005 to 2008, you built on concepts of impact. Our reporting started going towards more focus areas and creating corporate social responsibility areas, but we were still not entirely there on the creating shared value piece. Because a lot of the work that we were doing on putting the tools in place to help drive the health and wellness agenda was taking time to deliver against the metrics that we would then have and the measurement processes that we will need to put in place. Without that, it becomes meaningless to be able to talk about these issues. So that process was going hand in hand. So we were evolving in our reporting, but we were also evolving in all the backup requirements to make reporting a possibility. Starting with the 2010 global report, we hired Bureau Veritas to externally assure our reports. The aim here was to provide assurance to stakeholders over the accuracy, the validity of the reporting that we were doing, and also the reliability and objectivity of the information included in the report. We took another important step in 2011. That report met the GRI plus requirements, indicating that the report was held against the highest levels of disclosure and transparency, and that we had the report externally assured by a third party. For our 2014 report, we transitioned to reporting in accordance with the comprehensive option of GRI G4 criteria, and which we will do again in the years to come. Now, the other interesting evolution that we had in the reporting was also from about 2014, we started seeing individual markets. These were all global reports, reporting on global achievements. And then we started looking at the same thing, sorry, I jumped a slide, happening in the individual markets as well. So many of our markets also started producing and publishing national reports. So in the US, we had a first report out last year on the 2013 results. And now in 2014, we have again published a report just a month back. In the US, we had our report only pre-assured. Pre-assurance does not allow us to have public disclosures of that. But the good thing was that many of the sustainability metrics that we have in a US report were actually being derived from the global reporting, and therefore there was already a lot of credibility that we had in the way the global report had already gone through all the standards of GRI G4. So what are the important milestones, and what is it that we learned over the years? The first and most important piece was, as part of a reporting strategy, it was important to first listen. We've been engaging with opinion leaders, thought leaders, different players and stakeholders in multiple areas: government, regulatory, academics, the scientific world. This we've been doing for a long time, but we formalized that also into almost an annualized stakeholder convening. In fact, there's another one in Washington only next week. So this was an important forum for us. And this was not a forum for us to talk about all the good things that we were doing. It was a forum for us to sit there and listen. And we learned from both the criticisms and the encouragement. We also learned about what are the issues that are important to those stakeholders. And therefore, what would then feed into our next step, which is the materiality analysis. And that assessment is crucial. What in the kind of business that we are in are issues that are important, both from a business perspective, but also equally from the perspective of stakeholders. So if I, as a food and beverage company, decide to go into an area that I define as my creating shared value, which has no connection whatsoever with the business, I'm really again talking to myself. And this is where our stakeholder convenings are extremely helpful in shaping the agenda for what we need to be focusing on and what we therefore must follow up and report on. This is a very crucial next step. And the third piece was, again, how does it then evolve? So while it helped shape the requirements, it also helped shape a perspective on how we would do the reporting beyond just the GRI and the G4 piece. And here was an important shift that we brought in. We heard consistently from all the reporters, you guys are very good at talking about everything you've done in the past. What about the future? So knowing these issues are important, what are your plans? And using this kind of reporting mechanism, we were able to actually force the agenda internally and start looking at forward-looking commitments, which we weren't doing in the past. We now have 38 commitments against which we measure and report ourselves on. And these are all in areas that have been defined by the materiality assessment as important both to the business, but also to all the stakeholders. And of course, in reporting, Alison already mentioned this, we had an important piece on transparency, and therefore all the indicators had to be importantly assessed, and therefore we were looking at all the indicators coming from the GRI system. So that's really our key learnings. Now, if I was to say what would people want to do if they're going into this area, first and foremost, be prepared. It is not a simple exercise of saying from one day to the next we will do the reporting. There is a lot of homework that needs to be done. There's a lot of process inputs that need to be put in place. But most importantly, there are some very significant mindset changes that you need to bring within the organization. You need to assess whether you want to have external assurance options. They add more credibility, very obviously, but they also add a lot more work. And you can't be doing this without some kind of dedicated resource or commitment behind this process. So that's an important learning. Consider GRI as a tool to improve and focus your reporting, but also improve the focus internally. What I found immeasurably valuable in the reporting process was the day we started making those commitments, I was getting a hell of a lot more traction within the organization on helping accomplish those goals, because they were out there in the public, and we didn't want to be putting things out there and not putting all our efforts behind it. It helped us guide, important to go back to the stakeholders, identify what is it that's important. That's a crucial first step. Without that, you can't get your materiality right. And of course, it gets easier as you go along, once you have a framework in place. But the early days, yes, be prepared for some fairly hard work, but also some fairly significant changes that you're looking at within. It's about ownership and accountability, and you have to have this at the very top for it to be successful going down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjay. I really sort of took that, if it was a medical group, as an obstetrical presentation. I mean, you gave us the components and the landscape that really gave birth to ideas. And the ultrasound that you sort of used continually during this process was a listening process. So thank you very, very much.